Hi, everybody. It's Belinda Allen down in the corner, right down there in the corner. And welcome to the Power Platform Share with my friends and esteemed co-hosts. We'll start with Mr. Mash, the Lone Ranger down there in the bottom. He is muted, so he'll come back in and say hi to us in a bit. That's Mariano. He got stuck at the car dealership. I don't know what happened, why he's there, but that's why he's masked. And he's not afraid of us. We're not infected. And then we have Steve Endow from sunny California, or actually not sunny.
Greetings.
You're smoky
We're
California.
doing better now.
Oh, okay.
We're
Smoky
doing
California.
Southern California.
Yeah, okay. Smoky California. And we're so excited. We have a friend of mine as a guest all the way from Austria, from the other side of the pond, Mr. Wolfgang Strasser. And you know what, Steve, ever since Wolfgang said he would join us, I had been singing the song Clap for the Wolfman. So my husband's like, you should play it for him. So I sent him the link to it. And now that's like the family song. So
it's in my brain all the time. I got the link. I haven't heard it before, but I really like it. Yeah.
Well, Wolfman Jack was a famous disc jockey in, I think, the 70s, early 80s, and that's kind of where it came from. So yeah, Wolfman. Yep. Clap for the Wolfman. It doesn't take much to entertain me. So it is Ignite Week. Have you guys been trying to catch some shows, some sessions?
I followed it at first, but I've had training this week and plenty of other stuff going on, so I have not had a chance to dig in. But it looks like many or most, if not all, of these sessions are now available on the website for demand-only viewing. So I'm going to try to catch up on a few.
Me too. So Wolfgang, what was your favorite session that you watched?
My favorite session was actually it was the Power Platform Overview by James Phillips, because it somehow showed off some amazing features that are coming, and not that kind of deep dive going only into Power BI or only into Power Apps. So it was somehow the vision they are planning and bringing to our workspace. So that was one of the most entertaining and interesting sessions for me.
Yeah, it's nice to see the direction that this is going into, because when you look at it in that particular way, because sometimes we get so caught up in the nitty-gritty that we forget the big picture as to how this can benefit our customers and a lot of the end users. So totally agree with that. So just want to give everyone a hello. So cool. Very neato. I am going to show you guys one of the things that they announced, Project Oakdale. And Steve asked me a question. He goes, yeah, is that like the CDS Lite, or is that Teams in it, or Power Apps in Teams? And my answer was yes. So I am going to show you guys something here. I'm going to let me share my screen for the guys where they could watch. I gotta find my Teams. Nothing simple, right? All right, where's my share? There we go. Share and screen two. Okay. So, Steve and Wolfgang, can you see my my Teams?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a Project Oakdale here, and I'm so excited about it. So let's look at my team right here. And in my team, I'm going to just go ahead and, actually I could just use one of these channels that I already have out here. But one of the things is I have Power Apps located right here on my pane. And you could get to that by clicking on the ellipse and adding in Power Apps. So what happens is when you click on this, it starts opening up Teams, and I want to create an app as opposed to looking at apps. And then I select which team I want. So I'm going to grab my team and then go ahead and create an app. So the app is being built specifically for this team. And then when I publish it, I could tell it which channel I want it to be part of. But it is being built specifically for this team. So this is a great way to handle security, where you want to put things and who you want to share with. You could just simply put it in right as part of the team itself. So it opens up, it's going to prompt me. This is one thing that's a little different for the name of my app. So I'm going to call this Power Platform Share. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Save. And then one of the things that you're going to notice that's different is my Canvas, because these are only Canvas apps, my Canvas already has some things built on it. So they call this a hero app because it will get you started right away. And I'm not going to make any big changes to it. We'll use the hero app as is. It's a little hard to tell, but it's two parts. There's a gallery and a form. So I could go through and connect to other data, any data source that I want to. But now the second part of Project Oakdale. So the first part is Power Apps built right into Teams. Part 2 is a CDS Lite version. So we're going to call this table I'm creating in this CDS Lite, whatever the name you want to call it. Guest. I'm just calling it CDS Lite because it is foundationally CDS, but it's a limited version of it. And so just like in Teams list, it starts with, that has that title column. This has a name column. And you could go through and edit that name if you want to. You can't edit the type for that one because it is that title, but you could also edit the link. So now that I have the name here, I could come in and say location. And then I can add other things that I want to add. So if I want to add a choice, I could say, all right, so I'm in South Carolina, and then Mariano's in Georgia, and Steve's in California. Oops, sorry. This is actually live, so somebody's sending Shane Young an email, a text, and then Austria. Okay, so I could enter in my choice columns like that, and then let's see, we'll come through and add one more column, and then was it fun? And then I'm going to make that one a yes or no. So you see I get a lot of options that are very similar to creating a CDS entity inside of Power Apps anyhow. So here's my table, and I could come through and put in some starter data. I'm going to do that right now. And yes, Belinda is the name I misspelled the most. I know that's crazy. And whoops, come on, where is my, yes, I had fun. I don't know why it's not, there we go. South Carolina, and then Mariano. I need a new keyboard that doesn't have the letters typed off of it. And he's in Georgia, so, and he had fun. Okay, so now I have data out there that I could play with. And so automatically it's going to update this hero app with the data. I have the gallery here, and I have the gallery, and I have my form right here on the spot. So I could come into preview, and I could add a new record. We could see what it looks like. It did take it out of order, but this is preview, so everything is likely to change. So let's put in Steve Endow. And Steve is in California, and of course Steve had fun. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that record. So now that you can see it's a functional app, I can make some other changes to it if I want to. So let me come down a little bit. I'm going to come to table view, and you can see it's just exactly what you would expect here. If I want to try to reorganize that so it's in the order that I want it to be in, I could do that, and I basically do anything that I want to add over here. So let me come over to the gallery, and for subtitle, instead of created on, let me put in location. So you notice that you saw the created on, it keeps track of some standard functionality that that you would get, like who created it, what date, and a few other metadata information that would be typical or that you would expect. Now that we have this the way we want, I'm going to click on Save, and then I'm going to publish this to Teams. And how fast is that to create an app and to make it usable? So once I get it to Teams, I'm going to choose which channel I want, and everybody's busy this morning. And let's see, we'll put it under the sample one, and I'll save and close. All right, come on, guys. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just come over to my team. There we go. And I put it under sample, and there's the Power Platform share right there. Look how easy that was. I mean, I built an app, built a database, and so now I could come in and add in Wolfgang. Yeah, now I've given you this nickname. And so you're located in Austria. And of course you had fun too. So, I mean, how cool is that though for functionality? That you could add something that simple. And you don't have to use this hero app. You could use basically anything to kind of make that happen, make that work out for you. But I love that. Is that not cool?
Very impressive.
It is. It is super awesome. And, you know, one of the things that I always think about is obviously being a professional developer, how easy are these things to transport from one team to another? So I wish to see, obviously, the tools develop in that direction. But this is super cool. And I know I'm going to get crucified for this one because it kind of reminds me a little bit of how Amazon Honeycode works. So I've been playing around with Honeycode as of late, and it's you know, eerily similar in the way you create tables and the definitions and what's not on their team. So, but it's super cool. I really love what Microsoft did with Power Platform and Power Apps specifically inside of Teams.
I do too, because I did a blog post on it. I had spent a lot of times trying to develop a pretty complex bug tracking system for software development using Power Apps. And I thought, you know what, if I just tossed all the complexity out, because all we're really after is like the list of what's outstanding, and just left the list of what's outstanding, I was able to do it in just minutes. And that's a perfect example of what you would want to put in this CDS Lite. That's what I'm calling it, because the name's a bit still up in the air, and that's a better explanation as to what it is. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. Now, Wolfgang, I also know that, and I missed the announcement, that there is an addition of Power Apps inside of Teams, or Power BI inside of Teams. So they made an announcement about doing some of that. Did you watch that announcement?
Actually, I haven't seen the session so far because it was a little bit out of my time zone, and I only read about the announcement. So they put out a version 2 of the Power BI integration in Teams, which makes it easier to embed reports and dashboards. And I think that one is not out but announced, that you can browse your data sets. Like you start your exploration in Teams, and you don't have to go into Power BI and then share into Teams or whatever. So it's more like Teams is your tool, and you start your data exploration from Teams. So
oh, that's really nice. I love Teams, and I live in Teams. I mean, I just live in it.
Since March, I started to live in it.
Well, and we don't have a big team. So, Steve, you could definitely relate to this because you don't have a big team either. The biggest thing I use it for is a SharePoint user interface. So I manage all my work, all my projects, and everything in SharePoint via Teams. So
Cool.
that's my biggest reason that I do that. I rarely go into SharePoint only if I want to create a list. And of course, now I tend to want to go into Microsoft List to do some of those things. But why don't you show us what you've been working on in Power BI, Wolfgang? I am super excited to see.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. I've got two things I would
Okay.
like to show, if it's okay for you.
Yes.
It's one is the external tools integration or extension in Power BI Desktop, and the other one is Azure Synapse Analytics, which is a thing I started to use recently, and which I really, really like. So I don't know if you already see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So one question, which one should I start with? The external tools or Synapse?
Let's start with Synapse because that is something that I have not dove into very much, and I'm equally excited about both. But you got my curiosity going about this when we first invited you to join us today, and so I'm anxious for that.
Then I'm gonna start with the Synapse thing, and the Azure Synapse Analytics. I think it was announced last year. I don't know, in a year ago, something like this. And in the beginning, there was somehow a confusion because Microsoft said, "Oh, it's Azure SQL Data Warehouse version 2 enhanced," and that was somehow okay. They are renaming a service. It's the same like the service they already have for several years, but they clarified it in the upcoming month, and they said, okay, it's one part is the SQL Data Warehouse we used to have in the past, and the other part is the modern data warehouse. And the modern data warehouse, I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of term. It's the extension not only collecting relational data and putting it into a structure and doing some reporting, it's also the unstructured or semi-structured data, like the IoT data or log files or everything that could be collected somewhere in your enterprise. And when we've seen some sort of architecture slides from Microsoft 2-3 years ago, there were several technologies that worked together. So we had the data lake somewhere in the middle, with Azure Data Lake Storage. Then we had some sort of data transformation and ingestion service like the Data Factory. Then we had data preparation, and there they mentioned the Databricks, Azure Databricks. And then we had reporting and also the storage, which was the Azure SQL Data Warehouse. So there were many different tools that work together, and they work well together, but they were distributed in somehow some sort of islands in that kind of data preparation. And last year, Microsoft said, okay, we are announcing, what's the full name? Azure Synapse Analytics Workspaces. And that is a collection of some tools in between that do the data transformation, the data storage, the data storage in a parallel way like the SQL Data Warehouse was. And then we have the integration of multiple linked services like Power BI. So we have an overall view and a tool to work with data. And the data, it doesn't really matter which format the data has. Even if it's structured or unstructured, you can deal with it. And that is the main idea behind Synapse, to put one tool to work with the data. It doesn't matter which type of data it is. It doesn't matter which structure the data has. And you can work and store and report the data within one single, let's say, tool.
Is this considered a NoSQL database then?
Actually, the main part of it, it's a data lake storage.
Okay.
So there you just put your I call it files because they are files you put there. But on the other hand, you have the SQL data warehouse in there. And you also have a SQL on demand pool, which is like a serverless SQL database where you can work and query your data lake and put it in a relational structure. So it's unstructured, it's data lake, and it's SQL. So it's a combination of all those three parts, which sounds a little bit weird, but I've got one slide for you to make it maybe a little bit clearer. And that actually is a marketing slide, so don't be afraid. But I actually like the separation or the idea behind, because what we have here is the storage layer, which is the data lake here. And then we have the different analytical runtimes. And Microsoft puts in here two completely different approaches. We have the SQL approach, which is the thing that we are used from the SQL data warehouse approach from Azure SQL database. And on the other hand, we have Apache Spark, which is the distributed data transformation, data query processing technology. And those two can work on the common data lake storage. So it doesn't matter if you are processing it with the SQL part or with the Spark part. You can access the other part and transform the other part. So it's really, really integrated. And you can use the language of your choice. That is one thing I really like, because I'm coming from the database side. So I'm not the R developer. I'm not the Python developer. And I can use SQL. The SQL I use for several years. So that is a thing I really, really like. And also for the .NET developers, it's Spark.NET integrated. So that is a thing I have to look into it, because I did some .NET programming years ago. So it's really well integrated, everything, and it doesn't really matter what is your origin of technology, because they are bringing two or more sides into one tool, and that is the Synapse Analytics. And in former architecture slides, we had those different islands where we had Databricks, where we had a data factory and everything like that. And now we have it integrated in one thing, the Synapse Workspace. And that is a very cool approach, but it's in preview. And that is a thing maybe we will see in the demos I will show. At some points, I think the team needs some more time to sharpen everything up. And if you start in the Azure portal and you search for Synapse, you get some results. And as I said in the beginning, Microsoft said, hey, it's SQL Data Warehouse version 2. And what you see here, it's Azure Synapse Analytics. It's the formerly known SQL Data Warehouse, the parallel version of the SQL Server. And the new one is here. It's the workspaces. So that one is the new one with the Spark and everything like that. And there's also a private link preview. That is, you can query your data out of Cosmos DB directly in Synapse. So you don't need to move the data out of Cosmos DB. There is some sort of, maybe you know, linked server in SQL Server. That is that part of concept where you can rest your data in Cosmos DB and query it using a Spark Pool or something like else in Synapse. And I've already created a Synapse Workspace, and I just opened that up here. And it's, where is it? It's that one, the Synapse Workspace here. And that one looks like a normal Azure service, what we see here. And it is actually the summary of some services that are working together. As you can see here, we have SQL pools in there. Those are my relational workforces where I can transform my data using SQL. And I have one Spark pool created here. So I can create different Spark pools, multiple Spark pools in small, medium, and large. And there are many options I can just use there when I create them. For the SQL pool, there are two different approaches. The SQL pool, the SQL pool, like here, those are SQL data warehouses. Those are extremely parallel optimized databases. I think in the background, they are using 60 databases to distribute the data, 60 compute nodes. So it's a cluster of 60 nodes. So it's really, really powerful to work with huge parts of data. And there is the second type of SQL pools. It's called the SQL on demand. And that one is a serverless SQL engine. That one is just there, and you can use it to query data out of your data lake. So there are two types of SQL pools. And let's start the development environment. It's called the Synapse Studio. And when we start that, we get another web-based interface, and everything around Synapse Analytics is happening in the Synapse Studio. And the Synapse Studio is getting updates, frequent updates, and especially around Ignite, we've seen some things we haven't seen before, which is great, by the way. And what we have on the left side is the menu, and they call it different working tabs. So we have a data tab where we can have a look at the different data storage mechanism we have assigned to our Synapse workspace. So I've got here two databases that are working with the SQL on demand. I've got two databases that are working with Spark engine, and I've got two databases that are coming from the SQL data warehouse side. And when I expand that one, for example, I have some sort of object explorer like I used to have in Management Studio. And I can just get here, let's do a select 100 rows, and I get the results out of my SQL data warehouse. No, I don't. I'm not allowed to call it SQL data warehouse. No, it's a SQL pool in Azure Synapse. And then I've got the linked services. So Synapse Workspace is the core itself, and there's the concept of linked services. So you can extend your Synapse Workspace with services that are living somewhere else. Like you can have one data lake, or you can have multiple data lakes that are assigned to your workspace. And you can also have a look at the content of your data lake here. You have a sort of storage explorer, and you can go into the different folders. And what you can do is just do a right click and get some sort of preview. What is there in the data lake? So it's actually querying, I think it's a CSV file in there. And now what I really, really like within that storage explorer is I can just have a look at the content of the CSV file using the SQL on demand pool. So just hit run and I get the content of my file. And that one is using the CSV parser, and it pops out just one column, which is nice, but I would need some sort of additional information about the format. And I can do it like that with the, let's do it here, field terminator. And I just add the semicolon here, run it again. And I get the different columns. And what I can also do is I can specify the format Like I've got actually that is population data from my state in Upper Austria. And it's available as open data, and I imported that one into my data lake. And I can just call the first column, it's the state column. And I'm just gonna use the definition for that one is the city code, the city, and we have the slow down, Wolfgang, the year, and last but not least, we have the population. And now run that one, and I get the columns named and typed as I defined it here. And what I can do now is I can use that one, that statement, and I can create a view based over that data lake file I've got here. And I call it population Upper Austria. And I have to go to select the right database. Population, let's call it population Austria. And go back to the SQL on-demand pool, the database. Let's see here, and I've got the population Austria view here, and let's see if it works. Query that one, and the results are here. So what actually is the magic behind? I'm actually querying my data lake using a SQL server. I call it SQL server, yeah, SQL engine. And with that line I've got here, I'm querying one file. But what is really, really nice, I could say select star. Wow. And if I do the alter view, and if I go here and I run that one, actually the SQL on demand view goes back to my data lake, fetches all the files that are there in that directory, and I get the data back. So actually it's direct query on my data lake in a relational way, which is awesome.
So this is giving you the ability to use T-SQL or SQL scripting to get at non-SQL data.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It's one way of getting the data into the Synapse environment, because when I click, I do a right click, I've selected that one, new script, new SQL script. But I could also start the new notebook approach. And here I get the Spark engine. And that one is using the PySpark language. But I could also, if I would be able to write code in Spark or in Spark.net. So I can use the completely different approach and querying my data. As you can see here, it's querying that one file, the CSV file in my data lake. And I get it into a database. I get it into the database that is Spark based, but I could also write it into a SQL data warehouse database. So it doesn't really matter where you're coming from, because in my team we have data scientists and they are heavy into Python, R, and everything like that. They are a little bit into SQL, but they are not mainly into SQL. And that is a thing where we can really, really collaborate, because I do my transformations and querying in SQL. They are working with PySpark, and I can prepare the data for them, and they are doing machine learning afterwards. So it's a really, really good way of collaborating with the same data with completely different approaches.
That is cool.
And that is just the start of it, because that was the data thing. So I can browse my data lake What I can also do is I can add some linked services, and that is new since Ignite. That is the knowledge center. If you are starting with Synapse, you can get to the knowledge center and you can just add samples into your Synapse environment. And those are public samples, like Corona, COVID data, the majority, but you could also integrate New York taxi data or weather data or whatever you want. So
these look like the old data lake sample data. Is it now just pushed into Synapse?
Yes. They put it there,
cool.
And it's divided into the data sets, and they also prepared starting notebooks plus SQL scripts. So that is a really cool way. For example, I would like to query Parquet files, which is a specific file format in the data lake, and I can just select that one, and I get those example queries. And I just hit open and I get it into my Synapse workspace. So that is really a good way of starting in Synapse.
Very powerful. I mean, a couple things come to mind. One is, I don't know about you guys, Belinda and Mariano, but for me, my experience in the mid-market, this seems to be definitely on the higher end, much larger data sets than what my customers typically work with. But I see the strategic value, right? It's not data lake, it's not data warehouse, it's not analytical tool, it's not 15 different individual offerings. This is a pretty amazing fusion of all these technologies and all these capabilities that look seamlessly integrated. Very impressive.
Yeah.
So that's a good question about the size. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Related to the size, I just checked the pricing on this service, and the base service he's demonstrating, the lowest tier, is estimated to be $1,100 per month if you pay on a monthly basis.
I'm a consultant, and my answer is it depends, because from the outside it looks like it's one thing, the workspace, but those are the different parts that are built individually. So we have the, let's go over here. We have the Sql pools.
Got it.
We have that Sql on demand pool. That one, for example, is built for transformed data amount. So they are billing per gigabyte, I think. The Sql pools here, they are built for compute time. So if it's running, you are paying the compute. And you can scale up and scale down. So that is one part. You have to pay for the storage, where databases are saving the data. You have to pay for the storage of the data lake that you are using. And there are other services that are integrated, because we have the data lake and the let's say, preparation, but we need to get data into it. So they included, maybe you've seen the Azure Data Factory. Yeah, it's included here. And you can create data flows in there.
You're charged based on the elements that you use within the Synapse solution.
Yes, it's really depending which parts of the overall tool set you are using. So it's really, and it's preview now. So that is the knowledge we have so far, but I think it won't really change when it's getting live.
Well, depending on the complexity of your data and all the different disparate systems you have, this could be an expensive offering, or it could be the deal of the century. So I learned a long time ago, and I know you guys have, Mariano and Steve, learned this too, dealing with ERP systems, but you can't always tell. Every now and then someone will surprise you. I'll never forget the time there was a 2-person company that bought every module of our system, and I thought that was, it was one of the biggest sales we had, and I thought that was crazy. But when we were done, they were so smart to do that, because that prevented them from having to hire a third person for a long time. And so And it's a but my question I was going to ask you, Wolfgang, is what size user would you see using this, or what in your mind is the ideal user for something like this, end user?
I think it's for the bigger mid-market and plus. So it's not a thing for the smaller companies right now, because it's really coming, especially the SQL pools, the SQL data warehousing part. That is the massive parallel thing, and it really starts working well because they have 60 cluster nodes in the background. It really starts beginning with 60 million rows, because then we can distribute it, and they are using column store index, and column store index needs at least 1 million rows to have one segment. So 60 million rows is one of the starting sizes. But you can use the SQL on-demand pool, for example, or you can create a linked service that uses Azure SQL database, not the SQL data warehouse, the, let's say, normal Azure SQL. And then you have some sort of cheaper approach to store your data, but you can transform it using the SQL on demand. You can have your data in the data lake, transform it using SQL or Spark, and then write it to a SQL database in Azure.
Yeah, you see, it's interesting that you say that, because here I am thinking maybe this is more for organizations who thrive and need to consume market intelligence. And market intelligence is volumes and volumes of data that you cannot afford to just mount internally on a server, or even if you are in a public environment where you have your own hosting capabilities, it's still prohibitive to do so. So, for example, you were showing these prior data sources that were part of the lake. Well, the way I understood the Azure Data Lake in the first iteration when it just came out was precisely for organizations to collectively pool data and be able to leverage different market segments that you otherwise wouldn't have necessarily access to. And I think, Belinda, I don't know if you remember, but when this came out simultaneously, I think there was Power Query was also on the parallel development stream, and one of the things that Power Query was offering as well at the time was the ability to query non-structured data and bring it in a structured capacity. So I would say that organizations, and it seems like this supports that kind of approach where you can actually take a set of non-structured data and make it structured, bring it into forms and ways that you can analyze it and further build it out. And this is just superb. I mean, just the ability to combine market data with your own data for analysis purposes, and having different type of data sources and different collaboration approaches to analyzing that data is super crazy. I mean, this is just out of the realm of what I'm usually see at any level. Forget about the middle market.
Right.
This is at any level.
Do the data sources need to all be ingested, or can they be like a remote live database or another data warehouse? It just connects to it?
Yeah, you can just create linked services. And that one could be, for example, MySQL in Azure. And it's just in there, and you use it, and you do some sort of direct query in the MySQL database, combine it with data out of the data lake, and put it into a view that actually can be consumed by Power BI. So that is the thing. And the point you mentioned with the combination of completely different types of data is a thing we do now in our projects. Our data scientists, some projects require, they need weather data for different parts all over the globe. And there is public weather data, there can be commercial weather data. And with that kind of analytical approach, I just query public weather data. I don't have to insert that one into our data lake. I just use a linked service. And that is really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I often give the example of, if you're a retailer, having access to a historical weather data lake to do analytics and prediction of, seasonal trends in retail activity based on weather.
Yeah, that is actually one project we've done. Our data scientists, colleagues, they worked with a big bakery in Austria, where they wanted to do some forecasting of how many pieces of bread are they gonna sell tomorrow, and they based it on some parts on public weather data, because they knew, okay, that shop is next to a swimming pool, to a public swimming pool, so we need more sandwiches if the weather is fine. So they really introduced that one. And
can you plug in Azure ML capabilities?
Yes.
Very nice.
You can use it within the Spark pool. You just use a notebook and you put it in there, and you call all the stuff you need, or you have your own models you would like to integrate. So it's really, that one is plain Apache Spark. So everything you can do with Spark, it's possible here.
Interesting.
Wow. Very cool platform.
It is, and there's also a web-based interface for getting data into the data lake. So you have the data factory included in here.
Wow.
And you can build data factory pipelines in there. You can build data factory data flows to read data from somewhere, put it into your data lake or your database. And when there's one thing, because we are Power Platform, and I need to show you the Power BI integration in here, because I've created that view in my database, the population Austria view. And that one is doing a direct query into our data lake. And what we can do here is I can create a linked service, Power BI. So if I start the linked service and I'm going to look for Power BI, what I do now is I link, okay, I already have one linked here, so I can't add another one. You link one Power BI workspace into your Synapse. And in the Develop tab, I've got my Power BI here, and I've got my Synapse integration demo workspace, and I've got data sets in there. So I've got a Corona Data Austria data set in here, and I've got one Power BI report.
So that's another way to bring in data, just by bringing in data sets from Power BI.
If you have data sets in that workspace, you can use and create new reports out of that data set within Synapse, and you can even start the creation of a Power BI data set in here. Because I say, okay, I'm gonna use the Wolfgang database. That is the one with the view, the live view. And you get a data source file for your Power BI desktop. And then you build your data set in Power BI. And I just build a very fast one if my Power BI desktop is here. That one connects to my Sql Pool in Synapse. I use that structure, and not best practice, I just hit the load and I use direct query. So I now build a Power BI dataset that is direct query on a view that is direct querying into the data lake. So actually I have direct query data lake in my dataset. And what I can do now is I just put in the years, the population, and just do a filtering on the city that I have. The huge town I'm living in.
Is that German? Do they speak German in Austria?
Yes,
Yep.
we try to speak German because we speak the Austrian German, which is hardly understood by our friends from Germany. So
That's like Southern in English.
what have I done? I tried to filter that one. Here we are. So I just put in my hometown here. And we have 4,000 inhabitants. And that is the report I'm gonna publish. I save it, and then I publish that one to the Power BI workspace. The one I connected to Synapse. Select that one. The report is uploaded, and when it's done, I'm gonna go back to the Synapse workspace. I've got that one here, and refresh over there. I've got two reports here. I open that one, and now I've got a Power BI report direct querying my data lake. At least I try.
Wow.
All I can say is you made it look very simple.
Yeah.
Actually, it is very simple, but it's loading. So it's
that's okay.
But it's amazing how data sources are coming from so many different directions using so many different tools and technologies, and it all looks seamless in Synapse.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And I like that because, sorry, Wolfgang, but I always talk about all the different languages that Microsoft presents to us. So I frequently say that the next language they're coming up with is going to be called Functional Universal, or FU. Steve was already laughing because he knew I tell that all the time. But it is crazy. So it's nice that there's a common place that you could put things and use your tool of choice.
Well, if you think about it, that's kind of the definition of synapses, right? Just being able to interconnect everything.
Yeah.
So
and
that's super cool.
That is, I started with the Synapse. Yeah, when I heard the first announcement last year, because I thought, hey, that sounds interesting. One integrated solution, but yeah, we had no access to the previews and everything like that. But when I hit the I tried button, it was amazing how easy it is to connect all those different sources, to transform your data. And also for a SQL guy like I am, it's easy to work with the data. And I don't need to learn all the Spark and everything. Although I learned some Spark in some of our projects because my data scientist colleagues said, hey, it's much, much easier if you do it that way in Spark. And that's right, but I prefer to use SQL.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very nice.
Impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, I'd like to know who came up with the idea. Hey, why don't we put all this in together?
And the connectors and the technology to make all those data sources seamless. I mean, I can see the value of this.
Yeah, and right now I think it's, as we already discussed, for the mid-market plus, but if you use some parts of it, like the data lake and combining different sources and building a small SQL on-demand pool for feeding your Power BI, I think that's an amazing story, even for smaller companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
well,
agree.
as you can tell, we are pretty pretty taken aback by the whole thing. I mean, when we're not asking questions, is because our brains are just trying to think about how are we going to use this next. It's just surprising to see all this technology under one umbrella. I mean, this is by far one of the best executed piece of technologies I've seen as of late coming out of Microsoft, besides the Power Platform.
I saw the thought bubble above your head the whole time, Mariano. I could just see it. And it was just dot the whole time. So, go ahead, Steve.
I see I'm digesting the capabilities in terms of the data connectivity, the repositories, and bringing that all together. And it sounds like the analytics can then take over from here with Spark and ML and other connections once you have this data and the data links assembled, right?
Yeah. So that one is actually a part of that slide I have skipped in the first part. It's all those connected services you can use afterwards, because the data is either lying in the data lake or in a SQL data warehouse, SQL database. So there are many tools that can work with the data you have prepared or you would like to prepare. Like, you can do some further work in Databricks, because that one has the optimized Spark, and you can do, I don't know, Azure Machine Learning or whatever you like. So it's really, there is no border like that white rectangle over here. It's more like the connection to almost everything else that is outside.
Very impressive.
And the connection here, the common data model. Sorry, it's just the thing, I saw it here. There are native connectors for writing and reading CDM folders included in the data factory. So even more structured data integration. And now I'm silent.
Wolfgang, getting down the stretch of our presentation, or having you on board with us today, but where do you see this technology going? And particularly, what's next for you? What do you feel you're still missing in the learning process that you've embarked on for this particular technology?
What I really miss, and I have the tasks to do for a project we are now in the starting phase, is it looks like they are all integrated, but there are some infrastructure like networking things when you want to query local data with the, how's it called, integrated runtime. What are those configurations you need to connect the different pieces in between? And then there's one big part, the data modeling for that part, for the distributed, the parallel thing. Because if you do it the wrong way, the parallel thing is much slower than a usual normal database. So you have to think up front, what's your distribution key, how to distribute the data on the 60 nodes. Because if you don't supply a distribution key, the data is 10 rows there, 10 rows there, 10 rows there. And with that approach, every of those 60 nodes has to be queried. If you put in a good distribution key, then not all nodes have to be queried and everything like that. So there is much more to learn than using SQL select star from and create table. So there is a thing you have to consider if you are using the SQL data warehousing part. If you're using the SQL serverless part and you only want to integrate from there, just start, try it out, use the samples.
So basically what you're saying is, even though you have this wonderful technology in place, even though you have all the compute power behind it, there's still some fundamental database development concepts that you need to be extremely keen and aware of in order for this to be performant. And
Yes.
this is not going to save you from that.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
There was one announcement at Ignite. When you are using Power BI, querying the SQL data, they are introducing a automatic performance inspector and tuner, whatever they call it.
Wow.
I can't remember the name. They are somehow tracing your queries, and if they find queries that are recurring, they just cache the results. And
so
you
it's basically like the what they call that. It's not the query analyzer, but the other one.
Query plan cache.
Yeah, it's going into that direction, and they are building materialized views in the background. They are refreshing the data in the background. So that one will be amazing. It doesn't solve everything you need to know about data modeling, but it solves, if the query is not running that good, it just caches the queries, the results, and then you're getting faster and faster.
Yep.
Now, I'll ask a the devil's advocate question. Is this product or service kind of in response to other players like AWS? Are there competing products, or is this pretty unique in the marketplace that would compel enterprises to adopt this platform?
Good question. Good question.
Very, very good question. And I have to be honest, I haven't researched AWS. I'm in the Microsoft data platform for years, and I should look a little bit more outside, but
it's difficult. I fully admit that. And what I find is, like, my brother works for a very large media enterprise, and whenever I discuss Microsoft technology, it's like, oh yeah, we use that on AWS, and we have 4,000 servers running in parallel to process our workload. And we've been using it for 5 years. And I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. So
yeah.
But this for Microsoft customers who like the Microsoft tools, particularly Power BI, right? That's a very compelling tool. And if they're invested in Azure, this makes sense. I don't see a customer going to AWS and having to migrate their data. If they have the data in Azure, I think this is a fantastic offering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I keep thinking about it from like a marketing company's point of view. If you are reviewing tweets, for example, the sheer volume of tweets you have to go through and do analysis on. If you wanted to run something like, I guess, Cosmos DB on it, or even machine learning, I mean, you have so much data you would have to parse through. I think that would be really, I mean, that's one of the things that keeps running through my head.
Yeah, it's clearly oriented to save you the headaches of having to develop your own or deploy your own compute resources to process data. And that's where I think that's the key ingredient and the key differentiator from, say, you deploying or even purchasing capacity to do that stuff on your own.
Yeah, and that dialogue here. When I'm deploying or creating a new Spark pool, I can have that auto scale over here, and I say minimum 3 cores, and I can scale to, I don't know, let's try 2,500. So I think it's limited in the preview now. But that is the thing, you don't have the compute power in your organization.
Correct.
And here I just create one Spark cluster, because now I've got the requirement to analyze 10 years of all my data.
Yep.
And I need
purely
it
on
now.
demand.
Yep. It's really, and it's auto scaling, it's auto pausing, so I don't pay if I don't use it. So it's really powerful. And that is cool. One thing. I did many data warehousing projects on premises, SQL Server, and then you have your box, and your box is limited. Yeah, and with that approach, yeah, if it's the end of the year, I have to do all my calculations in that night. Yeah, I just spin up a bigger cluster, and it just works. The next day, I scale it down to the size I really use. So.
Very impressive.
Very impressive.
Wolfgang, you have been such a tremendous amount of source for information for us today. I am so grateful. I sorry we didn't get to the Power BI tools, but obviously we were fascinated by this. So we'll have to have you back another time to keep showing us. So.
How about next month?
Yeah,
whenever you say we should plan something, I'm ready to show you something. So
very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
This was absolutely astounding. Thank you, because I had a very muddled understanding of what this was before today. So you helped me in this 1 hour clarify it a lot. So I appreciate that. Any closing words, Steve, before we depart?
It's impressive. I just wish I had the projects and the larger customers to utilize something like this. And I think someone like Kerry Hadley would just love this. He would eat this up.
Yes, yes. I'm surprised he's not joining us today, so I'm going to have to make sure he goes back and watch this, because he would definitely love it. Yep. Mariano, closing words from you?
Wolfgang, thank you so much for being here today. I mean, you have definitely opened my eyes to a whole set of, a whole another area of technology that I was just aware of it from, different bits and pieces, but seeing it all coming together under Synapse Analytics is just being an eye opener for me today, and I appreciate you coming on board for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Wolfgang, I will pass to you. Any closing things from you?
Thanks for having me. And although you don't have the projects in the size, you could try out the samples and work and maybe get some ideas where you could use it. And that is the thing. Just have a look here and start. And it's if you pause your Sql pools, it's not that expensive. So it's really affordable, and you can try it out. And if you don't need it, just throw it away. And thanks for having me.
Really cool.
I really liked that you liked it. Yeah.
Yes, we loved it.
Definitely did.
We'll definitely have to play with that. So thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who's watching this, and we'll have Wolfgang back to finish showing us the cool stuff that he has, and by then maybe he'll have something new to add to this as well. We'll see. So everyone, go ahead.
Yeah, it could be that there are some news around the Synapse, but who knows? Yeah.
Excellent.
Hey,
Thank
we
you
don't
very
want to
much.
lose. We all don't want to lose our MVP, so keep it quiet.
Yeah.
No, they announced that many stuff in the Ignite session. I haven't had a look at the Ignite session for the Synapse, which is really worth to have a look, because they showed some new stuff coming. So
Well, you definitely have increased our interest, that the three of us who might not have watched them will probably be watching them. So thank you for that. And thank you for everyone. I hope you stay safe. And until next time, have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.